Welcome to What the Health? Where anything health is fair game as we tackle the trends and bust the myths about health and wellness. Here are your hosts, Dr. Dan and Angela Toro.
And good morning. Welcome to another episode of What the Health. I am Dr. Dan here with my co-host,
Angela. Welcome back. Thanks for joining us for another episode. Should I get the disclaimer out of the way?
Always.
You guys know this by now, but we are here for informational purposes only, in no way offering individualized medical advice. Always talk to your trusted healthcare provider before making any changes to your health routine.
And now that we got the boring stuff out of the way, we are going to talk about high-tech healing. So, I guess that's me, huh?
What does that mean? Well, no, I mean, honestly, I think this is a good. I actually suggested that we talk about this because, you know, when we were kind of trying to think what we wanted to talk about this time around, and you were sitting there really excited about a recent pre and post that you saw, and I'll let you talk more about that. But it kind of made me realize, we're doing all these different topics and talking about all these different things. And it's like, it'd be a great opportunity to really share what we do in the office and why we're different and how we're able to really help people, see these incredible changes. And a lot of that is the technology that we use. So I'll let you dive into the details of that, but I think it will be really interesting and hopefully it will be really helpful for people to better understand why we do what we do.
Yeah, and I think it's important to understand that since we are not so high tech that we've got video on this podcast, we will leave links in underneath the title section or whatever that is. Yeah, I'm so
it'll all be on our website. If you get back to our website, all of this information, we actually have videos that show the different technology that we have, and we have a lot of information about the different technologies that we use on our website. So ToroFamilyChiropractic.com. You can always find more information there to get a visual of some of the things that we will be talking about here today. Yeah,
and I think when we go back and look at the history of chiropractic, really, started in 1895. The founder was D.D. Palmer, but his son was really the developer of it. He was really the mind that blew up chiropractic, from the early 1900s and on. So he was really looking to measure so many different outcomes because they really didn't understand. I don't think they understood fully the amazing changes, the vast changes that they were going to get through chiropractic care. So a lot of medical doctors, a lot of scientists were kind of welcomed into the chiropractic profession very early on because they were trying to understand what in the body was going to change with an adjustment. So when you adjust the spine, what physiologically is happening? And they had so many different technologies, and that's for a whole nother episode. But one of them, I remember learning this in school, the neuroencephalomentigraph.
That just rolls off the tongue.
I know, it just rolls right off the tongue. I think there was actually another syllable or two in there, but it literally was an early form of EKG where they were measuring brainwave activity and trying to understand the changes, the physiological changes that they were getting from the adjustments. And so
even back then, it wasn't just neck and back.
No.
Like so many people think of with, chiropractic, you think, oh, they crack your neck, they crack your back. So
yeah, and that was an unfortunate, professional political move in chiropractic back in the 60s, 70s when Medicare was starting to open up and, look at accepting chiropractic. There were some studies that our profession, I think, to our own detriment, jumped on, and we said, oh, look at this study. Look at these couple studies. It shows that chiropractic is really good for low back pain. And, again, decades later, it shows that, chiropractic really isn't much better than, your physical therapy, than your, Tylenol, your self-medication, for helping low back pain. Now, we know that, again, it's not just about the pain. It's about all the other incredible functions, which I'm going to talk about on this case study, that are going to improve in addition to, right? But I always tell people when they're coming into the office, or I ask them, like, look, why are you looking for chiropractic care? If it's just pain management, hell, you can drink a bottle of Jack Daniels and feel better.
Yep.
You can pop some over-the-counter medication and feel better, reduce your pain. But then again, most people understand I don't want. They understand that it's masking. We're not really getting to a true, physiological healing change, and that's where we want to look and utilize technology. And I think the best chiropractors, the best of any profession, is utilizing technology, to their, to master their craft and what they do. I always joke, do you want to go to a cardiologist that only uses his stethoscope? Or do you want to go to the cardiologist that uses the absolute best, newest ultrasound, contrast technology and, with CT scans and, which one do you want to go to?
Or even better, do you want to go to a cardiologist that just goes off of how you feel?
That's right.
You feeling better? Great. Because how many people are feeling great before they, drop dead of a heart attack?
The next day. Exactly.
So, because that's when people are saying I'm not necessarily feeling better yet. Or they say, I'm feeling great, and then stop coming back. Yeah. So we know it's, okay, well, great. We do want you to feel better.
Yes.
But we also want to, again, use these technologies to make sure that like you said, from from your nervous system, you're actually getting better and your body is functioning better.
Yeah. And so you mentioned the nervous system, and the one way that we really look at this is infrared thermal imaging. So, in the breast cancer world, infrared thermal technology has become very big. I use this as an example, but basically you take a thermal camera, think of infrared, kind of think of the Predator. If you're
all the different colors, the greens and reds.
Yeah, exactly. So that's thermal imaging. You're basically creating.
I think at the Science Center, isn't there a whole?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's what always comes to mind.
So you're looking at different colors, using a color spectrum to look at intensities of color changes, to reflect, the different variations in temperature. So we use breast cancer as, or breast imaging. They're using that as a way to look at asymmetries or differences in thermal changes that are reflective of circulation to the breast tissue. And if you're having asymmetric or increased hyperthermic, variabilities to one area of the breast tissue, that can be indicative of a possible growth or abnormality that is a potential. So it is a very, very early detection. Now, what you have to understand when we're looking at this, infrared, it's not highly diagnostic of a specific condition or a specific illness. So the specificity of infrared thermal imaging, it's not very specific. So you do one test and you get, that test is either, true or false for a specific condition or a specific ailment. So because it's not specific, though, that doesn't mean it can't give us really good information. What it is it's highly specific for temperature variation. Okay, so that's what it's telling us. Well, what does temperature variation mean? Well, it can mean a lot of different things, but ultimately, temperature is under direct control of the nervous system, because the nervous system controls the vasculature size, the diameter. If you think of a pipe, okay, is the pipe getting bigger, allowing more blood flow through it, or is it getting smaller, less blood flow? So that size of the vasculature going to a specific area of the body is under direct control of the nervous system. So if we are seeing vast asymmetries or vast differences, very hot in some area of the body, and we're looking at the skin directly over the spine. So if we have very hot in one area of the body and very cold in the other area, and there's a 2 or 3 degree or more temperature variation, that is reflective of a dysfunction in the nervous system. Now, again, doesn't necessarily tell us exactly where it is,
or what it is,
or what the underlying problem could be, but it at least is an indication of a dysfunction in the nervous system. Mm-hmm. So now we have to go and figure out, well, where is that? What could that dysfunction, where could that dysfunction be coming from? So that's where then we add the next layer of technology onto that, where we use X-ray, but not just static X-ray, where we're standing still and taking a picture of our spine. Very important, because we want to see structurally when you're standing up in a neutral position, how is your spine curved from the side, from the front? How is it aligned? That alignment is very important.
Yeah, especially for hips. I noticed you can, with that still image of the hips, it's very easy for you to see kind of if there's a rotation and
hips can be rotated up, down, left, or right, and we can see that very clearly by a static X-ray. So very, very, that tells us where.
Very important technology.
Yeah, so we have the static X-ray, but then we layer one additional technology onto that, where we want to look at not just the alignment, which is the structure of the spine, but we want to look at the function, the biomechanical function, the motion of the spine. And motion happens in two ways. It happens globally, so you turn your head left, turn your head right, and you see your head swivel. Okay, but then it also that's looking at global neck motion. You look to the left, look to the right. That's global neck motion. But then if you look at that under a motion X-ray, you can see each individual spinal segment. There's 7 bones that make up the cervical, the neck spine. Each individual bone will rotate a little bit to the left and rotate a little bit to the right. So we can see what we call intersegmental between the segments. We can see small discrepancies of where it may not be fully rotating left or may not be fully rotating right. And then we also look at that same motion X-ray from the side where, and again, you can go and look at links, that we'll post here in the podcast that will direct you back to examples of this. But then if you look at the neck from the side and have you bend all the way forward and look all the way up to the sky, you will see not just a global nodding your head, yes, no, but you will see an intersegmental movement of each spinal segment. So we're looking at both the global motion and the intersegmental motion, and we want to see where might it not be moving as well as it could be. Because where it's not moving, that's where the restriction is occurring, and that's where chiropractic would say there's not just necessarily an alignment, a misalignment. That was the original definition of a subluxation. It's a misalignment that is interfering or causing a dysfunction in the nervous system. But we're taking it a step further and looking at the function. Is the spine moving or is it restricted? So the motion restriction, I think, becomes that layer that is so important to visualize and see how is the intersegmental motion between each spinal segment moving, or more importantly, not moving. Because then when we can see that restriction, it gives us a much better targeted clue, of where to adjust.
Yeah.
And the more layers you use, I always use the example of, the pro golfer, right? Me as an amateur golfer, I can go out and I can put a ball in the woods off of any tee, no matter what, because I'm basically trying to get up there. Okay, are my hips aligned? How's my grip? And I'm gonna, back swing slowly and swing through, as easily as possible. And guaranteed, at least once, probably 17 out of 18 times off the tee, I'm gonna be way left or right, not in the green, because I'm an amateur golfer. As you start to master that, you have the pro golfers who they're not just, aligning their hips. They're standing behind the ball. They're looking at the distance. They're measuring wind speed. Obviously temperature, outside temperature. Is it a wet condition? Is it a dry condition? How fast does the grass go? Is it cut super low? Do they have to avoid a specific, a specific hazard, water, sand, high rough? They're taking all of these factors into account to make a more targeted approach and a more effective, consistently, effective shot. That's what we're looking at when we layer this technology. We're looking at more variables, and the more variables we look at, we can make a more targeted approach to not just the customized care as a whole, but really the targeted specific adjustment that we're going to do, and not just where we're going to do the specific adjustment, but how we're going to do the specific adjustment. And when we do that, one of the things that we often hear in society is, I don't want to go see a chiropractor because the myth is once you start going, you got to keep going the rest of your life, right? Well, it's again, it irks me, but I understand why, because a lot of people have gotten accustomed to, they go in, the analysis is the chiropractor runs their hand down the spine. They feel, with their hands just for areas of restriction or areas of swelling in the spine. And then they go, a couple times, pop, pop, pop down the mid back. They have you lay on your one side, pop the hips and the low back, lay on the other side, pop the hips, low back, lay on your back, crack the neck one way, crack the neck the other way. It's very non-specific. And it works for some people. Yeah. That's what's crazy. It works for some people. But when you get, the challenge becomes when you're unspecific like that, you will have a lot of people that, hey, they feel great for 20 minutes, maybe 24 hours, 36 hours, maybe 2 days. But then the body starts to, you didn't get to the underlying, one segment, you kind of, mobilize the entire spine. And motion to the brain inhibits pain. Okay. Did you get it? Let me say that again. Motion to the brain inhibits pain. That's why when you slam your finger in a car door, you stub your toe, what do you want to do? You want to shake it, right? You want to shake it. You want to try and grab your foot, because you just smacked it off of the, off the bedpost, and you want to try and rub it, because motion to the brain inhibits pain sensation. So that's why when you go into a chiropractor or a physical therapist, or you go to a personal trainer, you feel better after you work out, you're mobilizing the body. So you're creating a proprioceptive, that's what it's called. Proprioceptive is a sensory input to the brain, which inhibits pain sensation. Okay. So that mobilization of the spine, hey, you feel good. The challenge is, did you actually correct anything, or did you stimulate the spine enough to make someone feel like, okay, hey, I inhibited my pain for, a couple hours, a couple days, and now I feel like I got to go back. Versus now we're layering the targeted technology. We look at the infrared thermal scan. Did we make a neurological change that lasted from before the adjustment to after the adjustment, and then continues to change the next couple days? And then we look at the motion x-ray and we watch, did the spine unlock or not? Because you could not unlock the spine, mobilize it, pop, 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 and still feel good, but not necessarily have a lasting correction. We want to look at how do we correct the spine as efficiently as possible, okay? Least amount of time, energy, and effort to the patient, and keep it that way for as often as we can, okay? So, all right, I'm going to take a breath. Any questions?
No, but one of the things that I found really interesting, one of the seminars that I went to with you, and that I've noticed now with doing more of the scans in the office, is one of the things that you were saying is, because people always ask, is that a good scan or a bad scan? And
I try and nicely say, stop reading it.
Yeah, it's like, well, again, there's some different things that we're looking for, and sometimes people will see one that looks very intense and like, oh, what? That's bad. And what we really talked about was we want to see change. You don't want to see people getting stuck in a pattern, and that's something when you look at those scans. Which, if you're not sure what the scans are, again, go on our website. We have pictures of that. And the motion x-ray. If you haven't seen that, it is really, really cool. I enjoy just watching them. It's a really, it's just probably something you've never seen before unless you've been to our office, because it's not something you would have had exposure to.
Well, and what's cool is, sorry to interrupt there, but what's cool is that, you can show that to a patient and show them, like, this is how it's supposed to move. Look at this. Oh yeah, that's not moving.
Yeah.
So.
And even without them seeing, quote unquote normal first, people will look at it and go, well, that doesn't look right. I mean, it's like right away people, you kind of just know, like, oh, that doesn't seem like it's going the way it's supposed to. But yeah, with the thermal scans, I think is really interesting is, doesn't matter what the scan looks like. If you're kind of seeing that same pattern over and over and over, that means, again, that something's not changing. Yeah. So even if the person, even if they're feeling better, well, we're still not seeing the change from the nervous system that we want. So that either means, again, that you take them back to the motion x-ray to see if something is still locked up. Maybe there's not need to adjust a different area. Or again, sometimes that means that they get passed off to me because maybe there's something going on maybe it's not a structural issue. Maybe we corrected the structural issue, but maybe there's something going on from a toxicity standpoint that's causing them to continue to have that same scan. We've had a lot of people with some help with, the diet, exercise, some different, very targeted supplementation, clear up a lot of those, intense inflammation-based scans that we've seen. So.
Yeah, and that's a fantastic point. And again, if you don't, one of my favorite quotes from Dr. Pierce, okay, and we practice the Pierce results system. He didn't even like it being called Pierce results system. He liked it just to be called the results system because we're looking for results. And so he said, if you think you did something but can't prove that you did it, you probably didn't do anything at all. And so we are so adamant in the office about looking at these scans on a daily, every time you come into the office, we do an infrared thermal assessment. We do the motion assessment usually at the beginning, and then usually I do one a couple weeks in, 3 to 4 weeks in, and then, as needed from there. But, I'm getting more and more, okay, with this case I'm going to talk about in a minute, we've gotten to the point where it's like, okay, we're doing an adjustment, and then we're looking, again, doing a quick 5 to 10 second motion x-ray to see how your body is unlocked, because sometimes you feel it and sometimes you feel a big relief, but sometimes you don't, but it still is moving better. So, and that's the kind of stuff that we need. The motion x-ray tells a story of how your body is processing and changing. But back to your point about being stuck, okay, I talk to patients about this all the time. Your spine can be stuck from an intersegmental standpoint, and that's what the motion x-ray shows. But neurologically, physiologically, you can be stuck in a pattern. And I equate this to if you're driving down the road and two of your wheels are stuck in a rut in the road and you're just driving along, you can't turn, okay? You can't adapt to oncoming traffic, So if a deer jumps out in front of you, oncoming car is swerving towards you, you can't adapt as efficiently and quickly as if all your wheels are on the road. So being stuck limits your body's ability to adapt. And as we have said so many times before, adaptation is the simplest definition of health. If you can adapt to your environment, whether it's cold outside and you got to warm up, hot outside, you got to cool down, you go up and down some stairs, your heart rate, blood pressure goes up, then comes back down. The better your body can adapt to its environment, the healthier you are. Infrared thermal imaging is a way to show, is your body processing? Is it adapting, or is it stuck? Okay. We call it rigidness. Neurorigidity, neurologic rigidity is what we look at. So are you adapting, processing, or are you rigid? And those, we have the serious conversation with the patients at the beginning of their care. If they go through a couple of adjustments and their nervous system is not changing, it's going to be a longer process to unwind some of that stress versus if we see very quick changes on that infrared thermal scan, we know that the body is going to be able to process more quickly and adapt more quickly to care, and thus move into that adaptive healthy state.
Yeah, absolutely. So, all right, with that, you want to talk about this case study you've been so excited about?
so we had, we'll just call her Miss J. But young woman, 21 years old, came in, and she has been, she likes to do horseback riding, although she has stopped over the last several months because of this neck pain. And she's had some chronic neck pain, and some of us have experienced this, maybe you haven't, but where it's just like, it feels very sharp, pinchy to turn your head. Every time you turn one direction or another, or you look up, you get that like sharp stabbing pain. And sometimes it'll like radiate down into, the shoulder blade. Sometimes you'll even get some tingling and numbness, but she was having some very significant sharp pain in her neck and in her trap and her shoulder blade. And so she has been working at a, horse arena or a farm, and she's been mucking stalls. Okay. So, picking up that horse manure and, hay and, lifting that up, and probably to her detriment, doing it to one side because we've got a dominant side. And I tell people this all the time. If you're raking leaves, if you're shoveling snow, and I know we're coming up in the season of raking and shoveling, and, you want to try and do things opposite side. Even, ladies, carrying your purse, not just one side, do the other. I know we're all guilty of it, but, trying to do things opposite sides because, again, it builds up that symmetry of motion, that global motion that we talked about before. But she was doing it one-sided, and again, so this pain is chronic pain, and she, was always uncomfortable in her neck and didn't feel right, but had just really, really amplified over the last several weeks. And then, again, as we discuss further, because it's never just about the pain, really, it's about, how is this limiting you? Well, she hasn't been able to run, and she, again, likes to keep herself in shape. She's 21. She, likes to move and be athletic. She hasn't been able to run. She has stopped horseback riding because she doesn't feel like she can, canter correctly. She doesn't feel like she can turn with the horse symmetrically. Mm-hmm. She can go really well to the left, but then when she goes to the right, she feels like her body is pushing left, but as the horse is going to the right. But she was explaining to me that she should be able to turn with the horse, turn her shoulders with the horse. I don't horseback ride, so I was just taking her word for it. But as she was explaining this to me, I'm like, well, this makes sense with what I'm seeing on the X-ray. So, this was at her review of findings after we had, her initial assessment. So she came in for her initial assessment. It was so blatantly obvious when she took her head forward. The first four bones in her neck and her skull, boom, 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 they opened right up. Nice, smooth, rolling motion. And then right at C5, okay, C5 is kind of the center of the neck curve. It just stopped, okay? And again, we'll have a link that you can go and watch this. But it just stopped. And then 6 and 7 below it locked up as well. Okay, so basically you had a nice smooth rolling curve, which is what it should do when you take your chin down to your chest. And then, it just stopped at 5 and created this restriction or this stacking. Okay, so they weren't moving appropriately. That was putting a stress on the spinal cord and the nerve roots that were leaving that area. And that restriction then was causing the pinching. So there was probably localized inflammation in there. A lot of reasons that it could have been restricted. And, it could have been something that was building over a long period of time. Could have been the recent one-sided mucking stalls, but for whatever the reason, it wasn't moving appropriately. So we went in there, we adjusted C5. Well, she comes up off of the table and Miss J is nearly in tears because of how much, and again, we've all had those adjustments. I shouldn't say that. Many of us have had those adjustments where it's like we're in a ton of pain. And it's like, boom, the body just releases. I actually just got adjusted by my chiropractor yesterday. And I was, I didn't even realize how much my lungs were starting to lock up. Mm-hmm. And he adjusted my T3 and it was like, oh my gosh, I was laying on the table. My low back was in pain just because I was laying on the table. My low back wasn't the problem. He went up to my mid back, adjusted my T3, and I'm like, low back pain completely dissipates. I get up off the table. I'm like, oh my gosh, I can breathe again.
I say that every time you adjust me. I'm like, okay, and I can breathe again.
Yeah, and it's just amazing that, and again, there's so many people out there that don't necessarily have any aches and pains, but they're restricted elsewhere in their body. Maybe their heart isn't functioning. They've got these arrhythmias or, this feeling of anxiety. They can't take a full breath in, but none of that is ever related back to the spine and the nervous system as a chiropractic problem. It should be. So anyway, we adjusted her C5, one adjustment. Her mother was there and she was watching, and she gets up off the table. She's nearly in tears and she's just turning her head left, right, up, down. She's like, and again, she's been trying different methods. She was getting massage therapy. She was trying different methods to feel better, to get her through this pain. But it wasn't until we saw the lock of exactly where it was. And because she's younger, spine still a little bit, has some pliability to it. We were able to get that adjustment. Now, interestingly enough, the immediate thermal change it didn't look positive. It changed, but that's the key. Sometimes I tell people this. You've unlocked the rush of nerve supply, so now it can look more intense right after the adjustment. That's okay. Mm-hmm. We just want to see, did it change? Well, she comes back in a week later and 50% improvement on the thermal change, 75% improvement symptomatically of the pain, shooting pain in her neck and her arm, 75% better after that one adjustment. And again, this is not a girl who's going to need to come into the chiropractor 1 to 2 times a week for the rest of her life. She shouldn't be. No one should be like that. Yeah. There are some people who need more care, who've been through a ton of car accidents and maybe didn't start care until their 40s or 50s or had some nasty whiplash whiplash injury and there's some instability, and maybe they need a little bit, they need more care than the average person. But the average person should not need, a weekly hard adjustment for the rest of their life. And I'm sorry if I offended any other chiropractors, practitioners listening. Happy to debate you on it. So at the end of the day, 75% improvement in her symptoms. She was breathing significantly better, and she just said she felt. She went back to the car after that adjustment. She told me this a week later at her next appointment. It was like, she was telling her mom, like, I feel lighter. I feel like I'm just, it's just this wave of relaxation came over her. So a week later, and again, we're doing this more in the office. These quick one adjustment changes, we're monitoring this, because if we don't look at it, then you don't know. Mm-hmm. So we look at it, and we just did a quick forward, backward, motion x-ray of her neck. And almost 100% correction in the motion of the spine. Yeah, I mean, again, Joe Schmo, who doesn't know anything about x-ray, could look at this and say, wow, that's a massive improvement.
I mean, she couldn't get her chin anywhere near down to her chest. And then the post, I mean, it was just,
Yeah, so again, go check out the link. We'll have it here in the, on the podcast links. But again, it's just incredible when you see it, as the practitioner, it gives me the absolute confidence to know exactly which segment I need to adjust. And then again, to have the symptomatic change. But even if she wasn't feeling 75% better, maybe she was some people only feel, 20% better, 10% better after a first adjustment. Some people don't feel any better. Some people feel a little bit more stiff, tight, but, we were able to prove with the infrared thermal scan that healing was happening. Mm-hmm. I like that. Healing was happening. Okay. And that's where, the technology, when you start to layer that analysis, the more variables you look at, and the more you can be specific with your adjusting, the better, more efficient results you're going to get. And that's where the high-tech healing comes into play. I would love to be able to get to the point of, working with hospitals where we could actually do functional MRIs, because a functional MRI actually looks at circulation, lymphatic flow, cerebrospinal fluid. That's the fluid that bathes the brain, and they look closely at that in concussion, traumatic brain injuries. I would be able to love to track, because there has been some research, very early research showing that adjustments to the neck, in a very proper, effective way, improves that, bathing of that flow, that cerebrospinal fluid flow through the brain and spinal cord, which is fantastic for healing of those traumatic brain injuries. So, but looking at those functional MRIs, looking at, all of these different factors, it would be so cool to have chiropractors be able to partner with these scientists and, and medical doctors to be able to look at this stuff more as a team approach to healing, and not just, no, my method works. No, my method works. How do we blend that all together to get the best result for everyone who's coming through the doors? But at least at this point in time, we do have, a very, very effective approach where, we're getting 95 to 99.9% of people significantly better and turning their health around.
Yeah.
Okay? And, I love when it happens in one adjustment, not necessarily the standard, but we knew it was happening because of looking. Okay, we did the analysis and we knew where to look, and we saw the result. And in this case, very blessed to see that it matched the symptomatic improvement. So, okay, now I'm tired.
But it really does. I mean, I think that was just a great representation of why we do what we do. We're not just about getting the technology just for, because we want the latest, greatest thing.
It's not just the bells and whistles.
In fact, you get, there's reps all the time being like, oh, I have this. I mean, you're very specific about what you choose to bring into the office and what we utilize. And it really is, it's like you said, we have a good system in place where, and we do continue with the seminars and things, continue to hear other people's experiences and learn different ways to, like you said, you started doing the follow-up x-rays more earlier in the
especially in younger individuals.
Yeah, because we are seeing that change, and again, it's great because we can see exactly when we can see changes like that, or see if they're not happening and adjust. So it's adjust the adjustment.
Adjust the adjustment, exactly.
But it really, like we always say, it's like that technology allows us to give very, very specific adjustments so that it's not, you're getting the results and your body is truly healing.
Yeah.
That.
High-tech healing.
High-tech healing.
So if you know someone, a lot of you listen to this, are already current patients of ours, and we thank you for being, committed members to your health and healing. But if you know someone who is looking, is resonating, looking for this, they're looking for answers, solutions to their health and well-being, do not hesitate to, send them to the website, Turo, Turo, familychiropractic.com. And again, I am happy to do a consultation. Anyone across the country, anyone across the world, I am happy to do a consultation, and if we can't help them directly physically, hopefully we can find them someone who can. But I want to thank you so much for joining us as always, and you share in my excitement for what I do and being able to help individuals get healthy and stay healthy for a lifetime. So with that being said, I am Dr. Dan
here with Angela. Thank you guys so much. We'll see you next time.
See you at the next What the Health podcast. Take care.
You've been listening to What the Health with Dr. Dan and Angela Toro, brought to you by Toro Family Chiropractic. To learn more about the resources mentioned on today's show or listen to past episodes, visit www.whatthehealth.world.